On May 5th, 2008, my bunkie in federal prison tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Hey, dude, I'd like your mole." And I said, "That sounds very concerning to me. I don't even know what mole is." And he said, Mole is, it's Cinco de Mayo, and it's a food that I love. Come down to the chow hall and let me have your mole." And I was sort of like, "Dude, I don't really know what mole is. I don't want it. I already ate and ran. I'm not going to go to the chow hall." Then he kind of politely said, "Dude, I really like it. Do me the favor of walking down to the chow hall with me. They're going to hand you the tray, put the food on my plate, and I'm going to eat it." And I said, "Okay, no problem." That was a little favor I did for him because he had done me a lot of favors in the week that I had surrendered to prison, and he appreciated it much like I appreciated so much of what he had done for me. So what's the purpose of this little story? I'm going to share some federal prison tips in this video. I'm going live for the first time in a long time, though I figured I should, because every video I do with just one take anyway, the good, bad, and ugly that accompanies it. Let's just get it done. At times, I tend to dive into some Hollywood editing, which is unnecessary. So I have the content in my mind. I'm just going to share some tips that can really help you get off to the right start in federal prison. After all, you can't do great things, whether it's running a business, writing a blog, writing a book, getting fitter and stronger, if you're associating with the wrong people, if you're getting into some trouble. So these tips come from my experience, everyone on our team, including my business partner, Michael Santos, who endured 26 years in prison. So I hope you find huge value in these tips. I can't tell you that they're all game changing and life changing, but they should help you. And that's my goal, to help you. Before I get into the second tip, because the first tip is, if your bunkie wants you to walk down to the chow hall and give him your plate of food because you're not going to eat it, but he will, take the walk, do a kind thing. Before I get into the video, please like and subscribe and comment. If I make some mistakes on this live stream, forgive me. I hope to do more of them. The second tip I'd like to give is being respectful when you shop in the commissary. There are people in prison who have myriad resources. There are some people who can spend $1,000 a month to live with email and phone and having money go on multiple people's books so they could really buy as much as they like in the commissary. Some people would like to, but they don't. So I encourage you in that first commissary shopping, or any commissary shopping, to be somewhat respectful. You don't have to go down and blow your whole budget, so to speak, and ask six dudes when you're got to have all your bags. "Hey, can you help me carry this, upstairs?" While other guys are looking at you like they're jealous, they're angry. It can be off-putting, especially if you've just surrendered to federal prison. So I encourage you to be somewhat patient. Also, I remember when I was at Taft Federal Prison Camp, it's now closed, there was a prisoner who inspected like every piece of fruit when it came out. And unfortunately, some of the fruit may be old, it may be rotten. I hate to say that, but it's prison. It's not like we're getting the absolute best choices. And one time he stood there for like 4 minutes inspecting every tomato and avocado, to the point where people were like, "You have got to be kidding me. Get the hell out of here. We're all waiting to get our food." So if you get a bad tomato or you get a bad avocado, it's prison. I'm sorry, move on. It's not a huge deal, but you don't want to begin off-putting everyone in and around the prison, both prisoners and staff. It could lead to problems. When you surrender to prison, you're going to go through something that's called admissions and orientation. You'll meet with, you'll be in a room with other prisoners who have just surrendered or have been transferred. Staff will speak and go through their various responsibilities. They will go through their lay of the land, the rules of the institution, things that they do. It's not exactly exciting, and I can't tell you that staff and prisoners actually want to be there, but it's something that you're going to have to do because you can't get cleared to work until you've gone through admissions and orientation. At the end of A&O, they may ask you, "Do you have any questions?" Even if you have questions, just say no, don't say anything. Just shut up and move on. Everyone wants to get out. What some prisoners do is they want to be helpful. "Yes, I have a question and I just surrendered and I want to be productive. And is there anything that I could help you with?" Never forget that things that are ordinary in the real world, like assisting and offering help, are totally different in this foreign world of federal prison. So at the end of A&O, do not answer, "Yes, I have a question. How can I be helpful?" That's going to be off-putting to other prisoners who are going to go around and tell people, like, "We got this new guy that's offering to be helpful to staff," and is articulated in Lessons from Prison, a book you can still get for free at White Collar Advice. In chapter 21, Michael Santos and I write about a gentleman who went to staff, and about a day later, he went to his bunk and found feces and urine in the bunk and in his pillowcase. Do not speak to staff. I'm begging you. Another tip I would offer to people going to prison is to really find value in waking early, as early as you can. Now, you're not going to sleep great in prison at times because you're going to have guards walking around throughout the night, keys banging off their keychain, the census count that you're allowed to sleep through at 1, 3, and 5 a.m. But these guards could keep you up. You're in this dorm that's light, and it takes a little while to get adjusted. I valued waking up very early because you have a little bit of respite. You have time alone. You can go to the quiet room to think and write. You could sit in your cubicle or pod while your bunkies are sleeping. You can get the day started earlier, and the earlier you get going and the harder you work throughout the day, the earlier you'll be able to go to bed, because a lot of the trouble, the gambling, the nonsense takes place in the evenings in the TV room as the weight of the day comes off everyone's shoulders. That's where a lot of problems exist in federal prison. So waking early allows you to spend time alone. Also, it allows you to use the restroom and a little bit of privacy. I know if you're going to prison, you're going to want to get stronger and healthier and fitter. And a way to do that is by having a really good diet. So without getting into every single details, I went in out of shape. I wanted to get in shape. I began to eat healthier, a higher fiber diet. And I liked using the restroom in privacy in the morning, because come 6:37 or 7:30 in the morning, there's going to be like 20 or 30 dudes standing in line with a roll of toilet paper. And that's where you're going to feel like, damn, I'm really in prison, and damn, I really have to go. Yet it's a 20-minute wait. So there's huge value in waking early. Another benefit to, I think, a tip that I want you to take heed is, in time, trying to get a better bunk. A good job and a good bunk can really influence your environment in prison, the way you sleep, the way you rest, the privacy that you have. So when you surrender to prison, you're going to be in a big dorm. They may place you towards the front of the dorm. That is where prisoners who have had disciplinary infractions may be spending time. New prisoners, people that need a lower bunk, may be towards the front of the dorm because all the lower bunks are taken. I was young and healthy, so I had an upper bunk. But in time, you're going to want to move back. To do that, you really want to be respectful of your bunkies. You want to keep your cubicle clean. You want to keep your locker clean. Now, I always share things in my locker, and I didn't lock my locker, though people would advise you to lock the locker. But I was clean. I woke early. I wasn't rude. I wasn't noisy. I wasn't loud. I didn't snore. I was just very respectful. And that made it easier when bunks in the back of the dorm opened up for, like, Jay, my bunkie serving 20 years for a drug crime from Hawaii. He's like, hey, man, you seem like a good dude. You're working hard. Yeah, I got a spot opening up. My bunkie's transferring to the drug program at Sheridan Federal Prison Camp. Why don't you put in a cop out to Miss Mickleberry? You can be my bunkie. And I was like, great, that's fantastic. So the initial bunk you have shouldn't be the one that you'll have 2, 3, 4, 5 months later. But you got to be clean. You got to be hygienic. You have to be respectful, because people will be watching, even if they don't say anything to you. But there is no doubt that having a good bunk can really influence your adjustment in prison. Jobs. I encourage everyone to be very proactive in looking for work in federal prison. So you're not going to be cleared to work until you clear admissions and orientation, typically 14 days or so. But during that 14-day window, you should be looking for work. You should be walking around the institution, the library, the track, the chow hall, something that's of interest to you. Then you can very easily make a request to your case manager applying for the job. Now, he or she may say, that ain't going to happen. You're going to go directly to the chow hall, like many new prisoners do, but that doesn't mean you can't try. So I'd encourage you to be very proactive in looking for work, because the right job, like the right bunk and waking early, can really just influence your adjustment in a positive way. And I credit my partner, Michael Santos, for telling me to go find a guy who assigned all of the jobs in the kitchen. Because I went into his cubicle one day and I'm like, oh, I just found out I'm going to get assigned a job in the kitchen. That's where all prisoners go. He's like, well, you could be proactive. That guy over there playing bocce ball assigns all of the jobs in the kitchen. Why don't you walk over to him, try to get the best of the worst jobs that will make your adjustment easier? I'm like, thanks, dude. You clearly know a lot. He's like, I've been in jail for 22 years. That was helpful. So I went to, his name was Baker, and he said, yeah, I got 5 jobs open. He told me. I said, which is the best of the worst? He said, pots and pans. I said, done. And that was my job for the first 4 months. 2 jobs. I really encourage all of you to think about, what type of job do you want to have and how long do you want to work in that job? What I mean is, Some prisoners will try to pursue the out crew, which is where you leave the prison every day and go into the community. And the reward for some is you get barbecue or McDonald's or Carl's Jr. or In-N-Out Burger here in Southern California. That's of high value to some people. Some people will find work that just keeps them busy, that helps them forget about the outside world, helps them forget about the fact that they're in prison. You can make more money. For example, Unicor at Lompoc, you can make $150 a month, and there are benefits to that. So I understand some people have to work in higher paying jobs and have to work longer hours and actually have to do the jobs of other people. And that's another tip: do your job. You have to decide how long you want to work. I was thankful and I was so fortunate to be in a position where I found a job that was an hour or two a day, which allowed maximum time for reflection and planning the next phase of my life that started with thinking and reading, to writing. And before I left with Michael's help, I had this manuscript that helped pave the way for my life after prison. I didn't want a job that would take 10 hours. I wanted a job that I did as little as possible, but allowed more time to prepare. If you're in a position where you need to rebuild after prison and you need to start your life over financially, professionally, mentally, I really encourage, and if you don't need to make more money by working longer, I really encourage you to not just work 8 or 9 hours a day to fill the time and stay busy. Because what happens is towards the end of your prison term, you'll look back on that prison term and be like, wow, man, I kind of wasted this time. I found a job just to fill the time. I didn't need the $30 or $40 a month, but it helped me pass the time. In a separate video I filmed, we talk a lot about the U-shaped curve, and I write about it with Michael in from lessons from prison. I'm not going to get into it in this video, the U-shaped curve, though I do encourage you to read Lessons from Prison and learn more about that. The moral is, towards the end of people's prison's journey, many of them have high levels of stress, in part because of the way they adjusted in prison. I really need you to think about the jobs that you're going to have in prison. Exercise. Every person who goes to prison, most people, I should say, who go to prison, have a goal of exercising, getting fitter and stronger. After all, managing a white-collar crime investigation is stressful. It's difficult. In my case, it took more than 3 years. I ate poorly. I put on a lot of weight. I was just the weight, the unknowing, right? The uncertainty of what was going to come. I just made bad decisions with respect to my health. So when I surrendered to prison and saw this track, I'm like, wow, I'm going to get fitter and stronger and better. And I did. But let me tell you what happens to most people. And this is, I think, the 7th tip. Exercise in prison in dosages you can maintain when you come home. Because here's the bad news with 99% of the people, including some of our clients who call us years later and say, damn, my biggest success in prison is now gone. Exercise in dosages you can maintain in prison, because when you come home, you're not going to be able to walk the track for 6, 7, or 8 hours. No joke. There are people in a minimum security camp who will be able to walk that track for 8 or 9 hours a day, knock out 15 to 20 miles a day of walking, and they'll get in better shape, haven't really improved their diet because they're walking so much. You're inevitably going to lose weight and get stronger. Then they come home, and what's right back in front of you? Food, wine, all the temptations, many of which are removed in federal prison, are right back in front of you. The lion's share of people put the weight back on after prison. And I've been home for 14, 13 years. It's something that I still think about and manage. And it's difficult. It's incredibly difficult to do. So exercise and dosages you can maintain. In other words, if it's 2 hours a day, when you come home, it should be 2 hours a day. But you can't expect to do 6 or 7 hours a day in jail. You're not going to be able to do that when you come home. And if your diet isn't great, everyone puts the weight back on. Please be very careful about that, because it's a huge accomplishment in prison, and it's very depressing and demoralizing to give it all away. Business. There are many people who would tell you that you cannot run a business in prison. I'd encourage you to understand Bureau of Prison policy that allows the writing of manuscripts and blogging. There is a way to manage a business the right way from prison, but just because someone tells you that it can't be done doesn't necessarily mean that it's not true. After all, my whole business was built in prison. Hundreds of blogs written in prison, a book written in prison, universities inviting me to speak in prison. A university, DePaul University in Chicago, came to the prison to film me February 2009. While I was in prison, I began building this business with Michael Santos in prison. If someone says you can't build a business, just don't say, okay, ask probing questions, think, and take action. But I loathe and I get troubled when someone says, oh, I have a business, I have to shut it down, or I can't start a new business. If I did it with staff reading my blogs and being aware of my book, why can't you do it? It doesn't make any sense to me. Another tip I want to give you, if you've produced a sentencing narrative for your sentencing judge, a personal narrative, and it helped you, wouldn't it make sense to edit that narrative and give it to a case manager who's going to play a role in how much halfway house time you may get? If you're looking to get into the drug program, to edit this narrative and give it to the drug coordinator with hopes that he can see your commitment to getting treatment and therapy and your history of addictions. So you want to use assets that you create effectively. So if you've created this narrative for a sentencing judge, just edit it, right? You're in prison for 3 months, edit the narrative with things that you've done while in prison, programming that you've enrolled in, what you're learning, how you're following through on commitments you made to your sentencing judge. Give that to your case manager in a team meeting. They may or may not read it. They can flip through it and see that you did it. Continue to produce assets. Continuing, I really want you to document your journey through prison. It's probably the best advice that Michael Santos, well, he's given me a lot of great advice. But that was a phenomenal piece of advice that Michael Santos gave me. Document the journey. Why? A lot of people come home from prison and reach out to our team. They say, I want to work with you. And we may ask questions like, well, what did you do in prison? Well, some people say you can't do anything in prison. It's boring. That's not, the call doesn't go well. Others say they might have done great things. And I'll say, well, did you document it? How do we know? Right in my office, hanging behind me, besides 2 books, my prison journal, evidence all around, blogs that still live online for anyone to dissect. Till this day, our team still gets calls from blogs that we wrote in 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. A decade ago, our team still begins to work with people by virtue of a simple Google search that leads to a blog we wrote about how to get the best job in prison, how to avoid staff, things of that nature. I'm not saying you're going to become a prison consultant or in the mitigation or crisis management space. What I'm saying is at some point you are going to meet with an employer, a probation officer, someone who you want to give you money or fund a new business. And they're going to know that you have a prison record. So you can do what a lot of people do. I don't want to talk about it. And it's hard. And, people are like, well, do we address it? There's this elephant in the room. Like everyone knows he went to prison, but he doesn't talk about it. Be proactive. You got to think differently. You're a convicted felon. Thinking differently entails saying something like, I made bad decisions. I owned it. I went to prison. I learned a lot from it. And rather than just let the experience be a negative, it's turned out to be an asset in my life. I learned a great deal. To that end, I've documented my journey. Here's my book. Here are blogs that I wrote. Here's a weekly newsletter that I contributed to. I documented the journey with hopes that people will learn from it and do better. And I wanted my family to know that I could grow through confinement and I wasn't going to complain. And I could be better and stronger. So thank you for taking the time to read this work. Changes the whole conversation. By the way, those of you who are looking to date when you come home from federal prison, as I did, it also helps to show documentation and evidence of what you did during your time in prison rather than, oh my God, how am I going to tell this woman I got out of jail? Document the journey. As crazy as it sounds, I would do that through a website. On that website, you'll have a blog. And it's a whole lot of fun. And then you're productive while you're in prison because then you want to create effective content, which requires you to read good literature, books that relate to the life you want to live when you get home, because then you're going to put on this blog or website what you're doing in prison, and you need good content from reading to put on the blog, right? What you can't do is what a lot of prisoners do, which is like, hey, I'm going to maintain a blog here. This is great, but you're not reading it or learning anything. And then every day you write the same thing. I got up at 6 a.m. I went to the chow hall at 6:30. I ran 5 miles. I did my job for 2 hours. That's entertaining to people for about 7 seconds. Your friends and family are going to be like, dude, I'm so inspired that you're writing. This is fantastic. I'm so proud of you. And then if you're producing the same content of, I got up and went to the chow hall and I read a book in the library, after about a week, they're going to be like, anything else? You got to produce really good content, and that comes with reading good literature. A couple of more here. I want you to write your probation officer as well, right? While you're in federal prison, it's not hard. Pull out a pen, handwrite a letter to your probation officer. It could go something like this. Hi, Mr. Probation Officer. I'm Justin Paperny. Hope you're well. My understanding is you will supervise my release when I am released on May 20th, 2009. I understand you're very busy, so I'm grateful that you're taking a few minutes to read this letter. To begin, you should know that I will be incredibly compliant while I am on probation. My bad decisions embarrassed my family, created victims, and I'm working every day to reconcile and become better for bad decisions that I've made. I'm using this time wisely. Upon my release from prison, it is my goal to help other defendants traversing this system. Many defendants make bad decisions, as I did. As a result of my bad decisions, I went to prison, I created victims, I embarrassed my family, and I'm working every single day to become better. It is my hopes that you will approve this job that I'm working on every single day. In fact, here are some writings. Here are some of my work that I have produced. Please keep it in my file. While I've been in prison, I've done this, I've done this, I've done this. So you get it, right? I've done this and this. Thank you for reading this letter. I will check in with you again in the next 3 months with another update on my progress through prison. And I'm looking forward to meeting you upon my release this fall or this summer. You get it. Write a letter to your probation officer. How is it? The final tip in this first live video in years that I hope I did correctly: lie when you call home. That first call, fake it till you make it. My friend Seth Ferrenti, who served more than 20 years in prison, Seth is blown up now. He co-wrote White Boy Rick, I think it's called, on Netflix. Seth is great. He's doing great. We've done some work together. He served time with my partner, Michael Santos, in prison as well. Seth used to say to me, dude, you got to fake it till you make it in the Bureau of Prisons. When you call home that first time, your family is going to be stressed out. They're going to be, is he okay? What is he doing? Is he safe? There are some down days in prison. You're going to miss home. You're going to blame your lawyer. You're going to blame at times everyone but yourself for the problems. And you're going to feel like your end date is so far away, like it ain't ever going to happen. And you're going to be down and depressed at times, or you could be. And who do we tend to share our frustrations with? Those we love and support, those with whom we are closest with. So it's kind of human nature to call and vent, or as us Jews say, to kvetch, to complain about everything that's taking place or transpiring in our life. Don't do it. Fake it till you make it. I'm great. I'm strong. Or as Michael Santos encouraged me to say when I called home to my mom, who was freaked out, Justin, tell her the truth. You're one day closer to home. And that's true, because all of you fighting your case and watching this right now while you're on pretrial, or you pled guilty, or you haven't even surrendered yet, it's like you're in jail. You're just not getting credit for it. I'm aware of that. So at least in prison, you're getting credit for the time served. I want you to articulate that message when you call home. So if you got to lie or fake it till you make it, just do it. Because when you hang up that phone, your family can exhale and say, he's okay. Now I'm okay and I can get on with my day. So there you have it. 12 amazing, I think they're amazing tips that will help ensure you get off to the right start in federal prison and make sure that your journey throughout your time in prison is incredibly fulfilling and productive. And lastly, do not simply say you are going to survive prison. That's so troubling. Hundreds of thousands of people a year are released from prison. They've all survived prison. Do more. The goal is to thrive and master the experience so it does not define the rest of your life. Thank you again for watching. Please like, subscribe, and comment. And I look forward to returning soon. Goodbye.